I'm Linda Elseygood, founder of the LDN Research Trust. It has been my honour to interview LDN researchers, prescribers, pharmacists and patients from around the world for many conditions. Thank you for joining us.
Today we're joined by Donna from the United States, and Donna takes LDN for multiple sclerosis and Sjogren syndrome. Thank you for joining us, Donna.
Hi, this is Donna here. I'm doing well, thank you.
Could you tell us when you first noticed there was something wrong with you?
Well, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, MS, in 2006 of this month, so it's been 10 years since.
And what about the Sjogren's? When did you develop that?
Yeah, well, I've always had something wrong, I knew, with me. And just to give you a little background, it's been 10 years or more before I was diagnosed with MS. And I was always told I was working too hard, it was stressful situations, and I kept telling the doctors, no, that's not it. And so finally, they performed a lumbar puncture on me, and the test results came back positive for MS, but they could never tell me with 100% certainty that's what I had, but everything pointed to MS, and so that's the name they gave it in 2006.
Okay. How old were you when you first noticed that, you got these symptoms?
Oh, gosh. I would say when I first started receiving symptoms, it had to have been as far back as the late 1980s. So in 2006 is when I first was diagnosed, but it was intermittent from 1980s until I was actually diagnosed, but it slowly progressed.
Mm-hmm. How old were you in the 1980s?
Okay, you're asking for my age. Okay.
Sorry.
Right now, I have no problem with my age. It's a joke. I'm 57 now, so in the 1980s, I was, 30, early 30s?
Mm-hmm.
So
okay.
That's the age I was at that point. I was diagnosed at 47.
Okay. If it makes you feel any better, I'm 60 this year. And I've got MS too. So when you were in your 30s and you had these symptoms, what were you experiencing at that time?
I was experiencing tingling in my limbs for no reason, numbness in my feet and in my fingers, and I as it progressed, I kept dropping things, and I would stand up and become dizzy, and we all know that if we stand up too quickly, it can make us dizzy, but it doesn't matter. It would not matter with me if it was quickly or very slowly, and at some point, my husband had to literally push me out of bed because I couldn't move. I would get a headache, double visions, and my sense of smell changed acutely. It was either I could not smell, and then another day, everything nauseated me. Any smell nauseated me. My appetite drastically changed, in which I didn't eat a lot at all, and I love food, and that turned me off. The general achiness and my headaches. I constantly got migraine headaches. The slaying of my words. I can remember the last day I worked, and this was 10 years ago. And I was at a client, very hectic job, and I was called a client service rep, and I was visiting a client. And we were talking, and all of a sudden, my tongue would not move. And it was so, I can remember thinking, this is embarrassing. Not thinking was something that was wrong with me health-wise, but I'm very embarrassed at this point. So I looked at her, and thank goodness she's a friend of mine as well as a client. I looked at her, and I guess I had panic in my eyes. And she was really concerned. And so it seemed like it lasted forever, but I'm sure it was less than a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to function my tongue. I tried to get words to come out of my mouth. I tried to formulate words and anything I could do, but I could not. So eventually everything loosened up, my tongue loosened up, and I turned to her and told her, I said, I need to go. I'm so sorry. I need to cut this short. And I immediately drove home. And that next day, I had a doctor's appointment. I told him what happened. He did an MRI and saw the lesions on my brain. And he recommended me. He called in a neurologist friend of his, who happened to be one of the top ones here in this part of the country. And he agreed to see me, and that's when the lumbar puncture was done. And that's what happened. That's my story. So it was the most embarrassing thing ever. And I'm thinking, okay, this is it, because I was a workhorse. And I've worked since I was 13 years old. So this was extra devastating to me, very depressing. I cried every day. I mean, I could not get a hold of my emotions. That was another side effect. And so those are the things that I had to deal with. I went to the Mayo Clinic. You've heard of them, right? In Minnesota. I went there, stayed there with my husband for a week and a half. And they also told me I had fibromyalgia. That was the first time it was diagnosed, fibromyalgia, in conjunction with MS. They could never find out anything concrete about, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And so, but that's the story. Everybody is different with MS. So, unfortunately, they could not tell me anything different. So I came back home, my husband and I, and we were just exhausted. We refused to give up. We had to find something. We knew there was something out there that could help. And lo and behold, a good friend of my husband, who happens to live in Colorado, his wife had lupus. She was sent home, and she was bedridden, and they heard about LDN. And so she started taking it. 2 weeks later, she was hiking. They gave her a death sentence. 2 weeks later, with LDN, she was hiking in the mountains with her husband. He called my husband, and he said, Donna, you need to try this and see what happens. And I, being Donna, I researched so much. And I finally was able to do the research, and then what happened is that at that point I said, okay, let me try. And I thought it was going to be something that was very simple to do. But I couldn't find a doctor who would prescribe it. No doctor knew about LDN, and I thought, are you kidding me? So I ended up having to go to a doctor that was close to Chicago, and that's about 5 hours away from where I live. So initially, he prescribed it over the phone, and he said, fax your records, let me see everything that you have, and I did that. And lo and behold, he did prescribe it for me, and my insurance company wouldn't cover it. So, but $30 was a nominal fee for me. So I said, why not? I can tell you within 2 days, I felt a vast difference in my entire body, the way I was thinking, the way my limbs were working, the way I walked, because my gait was very, uneasy. I could fall if someone blew on me.
Mhm.
And so I was very accident prone. And that's how I discovered LDN, and I used it for 3 years. And after 3 years, because I was shooting myself for 2 years with Naltrexone, which did nothing for me every single day. The quality of my life was going downhill. And with LDN, it was nothing but upward. My quality of life just shot through the roof, and I'm thinking, you gotta be kidding me. How can this miracle pill help me this quickly and this drastically change my life back to near normalcy that I am used to? So my husband and I kept everyone we told everyone we could. Have you heard about LDN? Have you heard about this? And there's a friend in Herman, Missouri. She had problems with her lungs. They were hardening, and I can't, forgive me again, I cannot remember what is a pulmonary disease. And they sentenced her to death. In 6 months, they said she would be dead. And I just so happened to, she's a bed and breakfast owner with her husband, and my husband and I go there often. And we stayed at her bed and breakfast. And she told us about what she was going through, and we just exchanged war stories. And I said, you need to try LDN. And she was resistant for almost a year, but I kept corresponding with her. You need to try this. You really do need to try this. So eventually she found a doctor and she started trying it. She told me on LDN, and her name is Lori Doyle, and she's on the LDN forum as well. She told me the second night after 30 years of being in pain, she woke up one morning, there was no pain in her fingers. And it was because of LDN. Mm-hmm. Right now, her doctors have no idea how she is living and functioning. And she is wonderful. So I can't say enough about it. I don't know what else to say.
Well, that's an amazing story. If you had to have rated your quality of life on a score of 1 to 10 before you started LDN, and 10 being the best, what would it have been?
Oh, it's the lowest point ever. I mean, the before LDN, I was below a 1. With LDN, I would say I can go from an 8.5 to over a 10. Seriously.
Wow. And
it depends upon, because I'm going through menopause right now, if that's not too much information. and so my body goes up and down with that. If anybody out there know about it, menopause, of course most women do, who's of this age group. Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes, just flustered, but it's been more upward than downward. And I have absolutely no complaints whatsoever. And people look at me, MS is a orphan disease, and it's also, you don't look sick type of statement. Mm-hmm. Whereas you're feeling miserable on the inside and you're hurting all of the time, 24/7. I don't have that anymore inside of me. Every now and then there's a twinge, but it's nothing to write home about. It's nothing to complain about. I keep my doctor's appointment to make certain that I monitor how I'm doing. But other than that, and my neurologist see the change in me, but he refuses still to prescribe LDN. He won't do it. He has one other patient beside myself who is on LDN. Now after 3 years, let's see, I would say about 2.5 years ago, I stopped taking LDN. And I feel wonderful. And I feel as if I'm still on LDN, but I take no medication at this point in my life. And I was diagnosed as RRM, relapsing remitting. So I'm good. My doctors are astonished. You should be in a wheelchair by now. And I'm not in a wheelchair. I can walk. I wear my stilettos. Sometimes I trip, but that's okay. But I can't say enough about that's a miracle drug. It's God's sin. My faith has been off the roof. So I mean, it has increased my faith in my Lord, and it has increased my faith in there is something out there for autoimmune diseases, for cancers, for those type of things. I mean, it's a miracle drug.
Mm-hmm. And before we started talking, you told me about exercising. Would you like to tell everybody what exercises you've been doing?
Well, I use the elliptical daily, and each day I do that for 3 miles, and it takes about an hour. I don't push myself too hard. I do a little weightlifting, not a whole lot. We would say 5 or 10 pounds. I do a lot of stretches. It's very important to keep your tendons doable so that you won't hurt. And your elbows are bent when you want them to bend. Your knees are bent when you want them to bend. I used to have terrible, terrible pains in my leg, which only caffeine would fix. I don't have those anymore. So it's you keep yourself limber, your stretches, your yoga, elliptical, walking, and if you can run, it's very important. It's important for your state of mind, and it's also important to keep your body in as much shape as you can, because your body will fight for you if you fight for it. That's the only way you can beat this thing. And LDN, of course, that's the first and foremost thing, the number one thing I would tell everyone. In addition, you have to believe in something. If you don't, you're doomed. Because if you don't believe that you can do this, if you're not telling your body you can do this and keep a positive attitude, you've already defeated yourself. And you succumb to this terrible, terrible disease. So that's my answer to your question.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. Really do appreciate it, and I'm so pleased that LDN has worked so well for you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to do this.
Do you have LDN experience to share? If so, please email me, linda@ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you.